Next, we want to set up the cards one next to each other horizontally so that they actually extend beyond the screen, right? We've got these 5 cards here. And as we're scrolling, they will start scrolling in horizontally. So first of all, let's tackle the layout of these cards extending beyond the screen, and then we'll talk about how to create the interaction. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to create a while scrolling in view, that while this section scrolls into view, the wrapper that holds all of these cards is basically going to move from left and right, creating the feeling that we're scrolling horizontally, although we're actually scrolling down into this features section, which is going to be long. It's going to need to be long so that we can feel like we're scrolling through it while the cards are sticking in our view. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We already have the card component and it's wrapped inside features card wrapper. So let's just duplicate this component 5 times so that we've got 5 cards. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, right now they're one under the other. And so let's take the card wrapper and let's turn this into a flex horizontally. Now, naturally, Flex is trying to compress everything to fit within its size. And that's, in this case, that's not what we want. So what I want is to go into the card itself. And you can see that now that it's nested inside of a Flex, it's got the child properties. And I just want to set this to don't shrink or grow, right? Because we've set specific size here, 500 pixels, and I want to respect that. So now that I've set it, you can actually see that I'm going to go out of the component. They're actually stacked in their original side and extending. And right now I'm using my mouse to scroll horizontally so that we can see all of them. We also want to go and set some kind of a gap between them, something like this. And now I can horizontally scroll. Of course, that's not what we want. And of course, it also creates this weird bug that people can get lost in your website in spaces where there is nothing. So this is bad and we don't want to do that. And to make sure that we can't literally scroll right through the whole website, let's go to the featured section and just make sure that the overflow is hidden. And that basically means that although we've got cards that are extending inside here, they're basically going to be cropped if they're overflowing the size of the featured section, and we're not going to be able to see them. So right now I can't scroll and they're just basically hidden somewhere outside of the canvas. So now that we've got this, let's think about the interaction. First of all, right now I can't keep scrolling down because this heading section or the featured section, basically, we didn't set it to 100 viewport height. We just let it be whatever it needs to be. So it has space for the heading, it's got space for the card, and then it's over. But I do want to allow space for scrolling. So let's create space for 3 full screen scrolls like we have here. 1, 2, 3. I feel like that's going to be enough. So on the featured section, I'm going to set this to 300 viewport height. And now I can keep scrolling and scrolling. You can see this has become a really long section, and that's good. But what we want to do now is we want to make sure that when the cards get to this position, more or less, they're going to move into sticky position to stay here so that we can keep animating it. Because I can set the animation to start transforming this right now, but then it's going to transform while it's out of view. So that's not what we want. So let's take the featured card wrapper and let's turn this into a sticky. So I'm going to change the position into sticky. I'm going to give this something like 90 from the top just to cover this, cover the navigation that we've got here. And unfortunately, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because its parent element, the featured section, has an overflow of hidden, which basically makes it impossible to nest inside of it sticky position. So what we have to do is use this property, which is called clip. Basically does the same thing. It's also crops out things that go out of the canvas, but it also allows for sticky elements within. So there we go. Right now it's sticky. Now I don't know if you can see, but right here I have a scroll bar. I'm scrolling down, but this section is basically the cards are stuck inside of this position. Okay, so this is really, really good. Now what we can do is we can take the featured section and go to interactions and add while scrolling in view. And what we want to do is create an animation, which it's called horizontal scroll. And let's select the featured card wrapper. That's the element that we want to move from left and right. And let's move it. So at 0%, it's going to be at 0, which is where it is right now. And at 100, let's start moving it, not top to bottom, not on the y-axis, but actually on the left and right axis. Okay. So from 0 to, I actually don't know. We'll have to sort this out in a second and think about how much do I need to move them. because we've got 5 cards here, but let's just do something initial for us to test. And we can turn on this live preview here. And now you can see that as I'm scrolling down, they are rotating. Now, one thing I notice is that they're starting to rotate too early, right? What I want to happen is I want to first get into the position where I can see them full screen, I can read the content, I can consume it, and only then they start scrolling. So you can see here in the preview where I am in the scroll. Right now, we're starting the animation at 0, which basically means here as this section enters the view. But what we want is actually the animation to start now, which is basically 30, let's say 33. So I'm going to move this to 33. So this animation is basically the position stays at 0 until 33, and only then it starts scrolling. So let's test this now and see what happened. So now I'm scrolling all this way, nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened. I'm getting to 33%, and now we're starting to move. Fantastic. This is exactly what I wanted. The only thing is, you can see that we're getting to the end of the section and the end of the sticky note around 73. So what we need to happen is we need to move this, we need to basically finish the animation around here, around 74. Now let's test this again. And we can go down and start animating. Okay, we are basically done. This animation is done, but there is a problem, okay? It looks great on the screen right now, but let's see what would happen if I preview this now. So now the screen size is actually different because I don't have the panel on the right side. And if I'm trying this now, you can actually see it animates too much, right? Because I've animated into a position exactly where the panel, the properties panel was here previously. And actually, now that I'm thinking about this, using pixels for this section, using pixels for these cards, we've set them at, I think, 500 pixels was the size of these pixels. It doesn't make sense because I don't know how big the user's screen is, right? If I would, okay, basically what I want is to calculate how many cards we have. We've got 5, including we've got space between them. So I want to make sure that we get to the end, exactly the end of these 5 cards by the end of the scroll. However, every user is going to have a different size of the screen. So I can't set this to whatever pixels that we've just set it, right? Let's see how many pixels we've set it to. We basically moved it 1400 pixels, but maybe the whole screen of the user is 1400 pixels. So we have to make sure that this interaction is somewhat relative to the size of the user's screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the card and change the size from pixels to viewport width so that it's relative. The card is changing size relative to the screen of the user. Let's try something like 33 viewport width. It's a little bit too small. Okay, 37 looks good. So now I've got 37, and also the space between the cards, right? The space between the cards right now is 32 pixels. Let's try 3 viewport width, maybe 2.5. Okay, so now both cards and space are relative to the screen of the user, and you can see if we're making the screen a bit smaller, the card's getting a bit smaller. And now I can use these properties to think, okay, how much do we need to move this section? So let's change the measurements here from 0 pixels to 0 viewport width to something else here. I don't know, like 80 viewport width, or actually minus 80 viewport width. I'm not actually sure right now. Let's test this out. Let's test this out because again, this panel doesn't let me see what's going on. So no, that's not enough space. And actually, the cards look too big here as well. So I do need to make the cards a little bit smaller now that they are relative to the size of the screen. Let's actually do 34 and preview this. That's still big. Okay, so let's change them to 33. Play around with this until we find something that we feel works. So they are 33 and scrolling. And they're actually, now this is actually perfect. The scroll ends at the last card. And I wonder what would happen if, let's preview this. Let's actually publish this and preview this so that we can test it on a little bit of a different screen sizes. And we'll see if how does this work? So we know that now it works well, but let's say the user's screen is a tiny bit smaller. Then we're going to scroll through this and get to the end. Fantastic. So now we see that the animation is responsive. No matter what the screen size, it's always going to scroll all the way to the end. By the way, we need to fix the line height of this H3 here, which we'll do. But that, in a way, we finished up this interaction. Sorry that I'm I can't live with bad typography. It just kills me, so I have to fix this. So we've done setting up the horizontal scroll. It's also responsive to make sure we are revealing 5 cards no matter the screen size. Only thing left to do right now is to replace the content of these cards to fit what I have here, and then we'll continue in the next video.